First, the nation is awaiting a potential criminal indictment of former President Donald Trump.
As he entered that building, he was officially under arrest.
Quiet, quiet, quiet. It's a fight against his rejection of truth.
Trump, for his part, denies any wrongdoing.
In April 2023, former President Donald Trump was arrested for 34 felonies involving his hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. He earned the nickname Teflon Don because in the past, none of his alleged crimes and scandals seemed to stick to him. Now, however, he will potentially face the consequences for his role in instigating the January 6th riot on the Capitol, hiding top-secret documents in his home, and trying to convince a Georgia election official to find votes for him that didn't exist. April 2023 saw a first in U.S. history, the indictment of a former president. After being twice impeached while in office, another record, Donald Trump was indicted on 34 felonies involving his hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. These aren't new accusations, though. The alleged crimes took place in 2016, shortly before Election Day. Trump went on to defeat Hillary Clinton in the election, but before that, he needed to tie up some political loose ends. He had an alleged affair with Daniels in 2006 and wanted to make sure it wasn't revealed as an 11th hour scandal, potentially costing him votes. So he had his lawyer/fixer, Michael Cohen, pay Daniels $130,000 to make sure she didn't talk about their affair. Oddly enough, there's literally nothing illegal about paying off someone to keep them quiet. The potential crimes came after this hush money payment, because when they had to account for that money, it was logged as a legal fees payment to Cohen, and that's where the felonies start to apply. You aren't allowed to falsify business records like that, which is a bit of a catch-22 when it comes to hush money. If you're trying to secretly pay someone off for their silence, you can't exactly log it into your records as adult film star keep quiet about affair, right? According to the DA prosecuting the case, Alvin Bragg, the act of concealing what the payment was really for was unlawful because it constituted hiding damaging information about a presidential candidate before and after an election. Now, jail time would potentially be more likely when it comes to things like stealing nuclear secrets. One of President Trump's final scandals as he left office was taking a bunch of top-secret documents and storing them in his Mar-a-Lago home. And according to the Presidential Records Act, a president is not allowed to keep presidential records, and they have to turn them in to the National Archives. President Trump actually signed a law in 2018 that increased the penalty from 1 year in prison to 5 years for anyone who removes and keeps classified governmental information. So it's actually kind of wild that the first person we know of who might have actually committed this crime was the man who signed the law. It goes without saying that if top-secret documents fell into the hands of enemy countries, it would be incredibly damaging, and keeping them in a random room in your home where people can mill about is playing pretty fast and loose with the safety of this sensitive info. After realizing there was a fair amount missing from the archives, the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA, reached out to Trump's people and asked for them to turn anything over that they had kept. That resulted in a return of 184 documents, some of which were in the secret and top-secret classifications. At first, it seemed like that would be the end of it, but it turns out Trump was in possession of even more boxes, and he, or his people at least, allegedly lied about still having them. So the FBI and DOJ got involved, got a warrant, and raided Mar-a-Lago to retrieve the missing boxes. In all, more than 13,000 documents were found, including some nuclear info and other super-sensitive national security documents. And since then, 2 more classified docs have been found at other Trump-based locations. You know what's definitely not scandalous behavior? Subscribing to our channel. Just saying. Another Trump-based location, if you will, is the state of Georgia, where President Trump is being investigated for potentially trying to fix the presidential election of 2020. A special grand jury was convened in January of 2023, and while we don't know the decisions they came to, the forewoman of the jury admitted that several people were going to be indicted. It's not clear yet whether that'll include President Trump, but we know there have been numerous leaked phone calls, emails, and texts, all of which seem to point to Trump basically asking the governor of Georgia and the election officials there to help him overturn the results of the Peach State's 2020 election totals. He's on tape asking Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to, quote, find just the right number of votes for him to turn Georgia into a Trump victory. Of course, since the tallies were certified and accurate, finding votes would have meant illegally altering the numbers. We'll see if President Trump and others from his team will end up facing legal repercussions for this particular scandal. Another scandal from right around that time involves the riots and storming of the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th. Since then, almost 1,000 people have been arrested for participating, and more than 500 have been found guilty. 4 people died on the day, and 140 officers were injured, and 5 officers died in the aftermath of the riot, 4 of them by suicide. And while President Trump's connection to the riots is potentially arguable, it's not clear whether or not he'll be convicted or even charged with crimes related to them. The January 6th report seemed to outline a clear pattern of election denial, attempts to overturn it, and consistently lying about the election being stolen. And even in his speech down the street on January 6th, Trump did call for people to head to the Capitol building afterwards. But at the same time, in a classic Trump way, he didn't overtly say for them to attack and storm it. People familiar with Trump over the years have often pointed out his tendency to make ambiguous requests rather than demands. So that makes it harder to tie a direct link to him and the actions of others, such as the riots on January 6th. But as more people are being called to testify in the ongoing investigation, such as former Vice President Mike Pence, it's possible we could be looking at charges against Trump. But at this point, it's anyone's guess. One scandal we don't have to make guesses about is the Trump Organization's guilty charge in their recent tax scandal. The business was convicted on 17 counts of tax fraud and some other related crimes, and will be forced to pay a fine of up to $1.62 million. Trump didn't get directly charged for these tax evasions, though his name was consistently brought up as being part of their illegal activities. But since you can't charge a company with the same types of crimes as a person, nor put it in jail, that will likely be the end of this particular scandal. Of course, one of the biggest scandals of the Trump presidency was his alleged relationship with Russia. The president made it pretty clear he considered Vladimir Putin an ally, even in the face of mounting evidence that might not be the best move. Ukraine invasion. But long before that, there were allegations that the Trump campaign had colluded with the Russian government to try to influence the 2016 election, and that the Trump campaign had obstructed justice when the government tried to look into those charges. The whole scandal was an incredibly polarizing one, with Trump allies feeling it was a witch hunt due to partisan politics, and Trump foes convinced he and his campaign had acted illegally. And as you probably recall, ex-FBI head Robert Mueller was brought in as special counsel to investigate all of it. The final results were pretty meh for both sides. The report didn't find the campaign actively sought out Russian help, but that they were aware the Russians were doing it like crazy. And it also didn't exonerate Trump and the campaign of obstructing justice. But when Mueller was given instructions that he basically wasn't allowed to indict a sitting president, he had to say Trump kinda did obstruct justice, but that Congress would need to decide what to do with that information. Either way, I think we can all agree Robert Mueller has one of the most impressively square jaws of all time though, right? We can also agree that President Trump was nothing if not a unique holder of the office. He was impeached twice for starters. That was an American first. The second time had to do with the January 6th riots, which I talked about earlier. The first time was in 2019, and it involved Ukraine and their president, the now super famous Volodymyr Zelensky. At the time, most Americans weren't really aware of him, but President Trump certainly was when he reportedly withheld an arms package we had already promised Ukraine, because he first wanted Zelensky to help him out in bashing his potential presidential rival in the upcoming election, Joe Biden. He allegedly tried to get Zelensky to help them investigate Joe and Hunter Biden and to publicly acknowledge it. It was a classic quid pro quo, which suddenly became everyone's favorite Latin phrase for like a month. Mine is still in vino veritas, which means in wine there is truth, but that's for another video. Trump ended up getting impeached for 2 counts because of this, 1 count of abuse of power and 1 of obstruction of justice. Of course, while his double impeachment made history, some of the Trump scandals were not too dissimilar to other world leaders and U.S. presidents, and by that, I'm referring to sex scandals. That's certainly a topic we've heard a lot about over the years, though perhaps the sheer number of women who have credibly accused Trump of sexual inappropriateness, ranging from things like assault and worse to non-consensual groping and kissing, is what stands out. Regardless, there have been at least 25 women who have brought various charges against the former president. He also got into hot water in the court of public opinion when it came to light that he used to go into the dressing rooms of the Miss Universe competitions, which he owned. Trump at one point admitted in an interview with Howard Stern that he'd get away with walking into the dressing rooms when the women were naked because he owned the competition. Perhaps not an illegal move, but a skeevy one to be sure. Okay, all this talk of scandals has me exhausted, so I think I've earned a nap. Then probably some tacos, because that's my happy place. Have some thoughts about presidential scandals? Pop them in the comments section, but keep it kind and constructive. We have gentle hearts over here, you guys.